roundtable. For this very interesting table, Mr. Tibor Navracic, the European Commissioner for Education, Culture, Youth and Sport from 2014. Mr. Navracic has established a new Erasmus Plus program for education and training and is open to students, teachers, young people, youth workers and all the people working in grassroots sports without borders. Can you join us at the table, please? Then Mr. Vanja Udovicic, Serbian Minister of Youth and Sports. Mr. Udovicic has been the minister in the government of Serbia since 2013. During his professional water polo career, he was the captain of Serbian national team from 2009 to 2013, has been elected several times as the best world water polo player. Among many medals, he has 1 silver and 2 bronze Olympic medals. Welcome. Then Mrs. Joana Brean, Minister of Sport and Youth of Romania. She was the member of the Regional Development Committee, Internal and International Cooperation, Domestic and International Partnership Commission for the Execution of Public Works and is currently the Deputy of Chamber of Deputies. Mr. Janez Kocijančić, President of the European Olympic Committee since 2016, was the President of the Olympic Committee of Slovenia, President of the Yugoslav and Slovenian Ski Federations and the recipient of the highest award of the Republic of Slovenia. Mr. Bogdan Venta, Member of the European Parliament. Mr. Venta is the Vice President of the European Parliament Sport Intergroup, interested in issues connected with physical activity and has organized various conferences of the topics concerning match fixing, social inclusion or refugees through sport. Former handball player and coach in 2007, honored with the Knight's Cross of Polonia Restitutia for his contribution for the development of Polish sport. Then we have already met him, Mr. Volkan Bauman, Secretary General of TAFISA. Mr. Bauman is the member of the Sport and Active Society Commission of the International Olympic Committee and is the Vice President of the International Council of Sports, Sciences and Physical Education. He has contributed to and developed various international sport for all programs and campaigns. And Mr. Laurent Carnol. Mr. Carnol, is he with us? He is the ambassador of the European Week of Sport, former swimmer from Luxembourg, national record holder and 2 times participant of the Summer Olympic Games. So let's start like first time. First, we have some questions for the Commissioner Navracic. You took the initiative to organize this roundtable on the topic of healthy lifestyles. Can you tell us why and why you believe this topic is so important?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, first, the very brief reasoning is because sport is very important and healthy lifestyle is an essential element of the sport if we take sport not only as a professional one, and our most excellent athletes, of course, they do their own exercises and sports, but if we take a broader look and we want to talk about sport as a form of lifestyle which gives more health, which gives more activity, and which gives more competitiveness to a society, we have to turn to the healthy lifestyle. And let me be clear, for me, sport, grassroots sports and healthy lifestyle is not exclusively a social policy or sport issue and topic, but it's also a societal topic. I mean, the cohesion of a society is an important factor and an important phenomenon of the future development of the societies. And grassroots sports based on communities, on powerful and cohesive communities. So if we can promote sports activities at local level among communities, we can help to make the societies more cohesive. And on the other hand, it is also an economic factor, because the more sportive the population is, the more healthy, or the healthier. And the healthier the population, the less the social expenditure in that society and in the budget. Which means that if we have to spend less for social expenses, for health expenses, we can promote sports activities. That could be a benefit for the economic competitiveness as well. And saying this, we must not forget that there are very varying tendencies in the European societies. The public enemy number one is obesity. According to our Eurobarometer surveys, 46% of the European societies never exercise any sport, never do any sport activities. And only 7% of the societies do or practice sport activities daily or almost daily basis. Which means that, and the tendencies are worsening. I mean, 10 years ago it was 42%, the passive part of the population was 42%, now it's 46%, and 4% increase is quite worrying, I think, in 10 years. And that's why we investigated the roots of this passivity, how to tackle obesity, how to turn to young people, how to convince the older generations to become more active. And that's why we made a cross-sectoral platform with my colleagues in the European Commission, with Vytenis Andriukaitis, a commissioner responsible for health, and Phil Hogan, commissioner responsible for agriculture, because healthy lifestyle is not only sports activities, but it's also health, and it's also good food and safety food, and food safety issue as well. So that's why we made a platform and we issued the so-called Tartu Call, which is a collection of some concrete and definite actions at European level, which we want to implement at European level with the help of the member states and our program countries. So we will be one of the program countries as of 1st of January next year, and helping the member states' effort to make their population more active. So in a nutshell, that's why I organized this workshop.
Thank you. Mr. Udovicic, how do you think government can influence the behavior of people, encourage people to be more physically active and adopt healthy lifestyle?
Your Excellencies, Commissioner, Presidents, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I will continue addressing in Serbian. I'm sorry, but I think that it's very important for people from Serbia to address in Serbian, and for that reason I'm really sorry. Hvala na pitanju. Ono što je glavno pitanje za sve nas prisutne, ne samo ovdje, već za sve ljude, jeste kako da motivišemo drugi ljude, ali kako da preuzmemo odgovornost i da odgovorimo na izazove koji su pred nama. Jedno su mehanizmi koje vlade i koje društvo može da uspostavi da pomogne svima da se više bave sportom, da im da mogućnost, a s druge strane mnogo je važnije da svako od nas preuzme odgovornost i shvati i postavi sebi glavno pitanje, a to je koliko smo danas, ove nedelje, ovog mjeseca, proveli vremena vežbajući, koliko smo sebi stavili u prvi plan da je zdravlje na prvom mjestu. Složit ću se sa komesarom i dodat ću da su naše istraživanja pokazala da je danas 1 dinar uložen u sport, u infrastrukturu, mogućnost bavljenja sportom, 3 dinara manje u budućnosti u zdravstveni sistem i u zdravlje celokupne nacije. To je ogromna ušteda. Ali možemo reći da smo kao vlada počeli sa jakom, snažnom strategijom izgradnjom sportskih objekata koji su dostupni svima, trim stazama, otvorenim terenima, pa i velikim infrastrukturnim projektima koji su za vrhunske rezultate, jer i vrhunski rezultati i oni koji ostvaraju vrhunske rezultate su motiv svima nama da se bavimo sportom. Ali je druga stvar ako su ti tereni prazni. I ako danas imamo decu koja će pre da odigraju partiju košarke na PlayStationu, na konzoli, nego što će da uzmu loptu i da izađu na ulicu i da odigraju partiju košarke sa svojim drugarima, ili koliko je bitno i važno da se bavite sportom, toliko je važno i edukovati se, socijalizovati, napraviti prijateljstvo, drugarstvo i biti produktivan u celokupnom društvu. Tako da sa naše strane, uvažavajući sve aspekte piramidalne strukture i organizacije sistema sporta u Srbiji, poštovajući i strategiju i zakon, možemo reći da smo izazovima ušli u susret i da se borimo protiv tih izazova. Ali ono što je glavno pitanje, ne samo u Srbiji, jeste širom sveta, jeste kako da motivišemo roditelje, kako da motivišemo bake i deke, kako da motivišemo najmlađe da se bave sportom, da izađu na ulicu, da izađu na terene i da slobodno vreme koje koriste slobodno vreme koristeći mobilne telefone, gde svako od nas može da izračuna da minimum toku dana posveti pola sata društvenim mrežama, da to vreme posveti vežbajući, da to vreme posveti da prvo sam pojedinac bude zdraviji, a samim tim motiviše druge i da povuče svoje prijatelje, što bi značilo da celokupno društvo bude zdravije.
So, I'm sorry, I'm asking in English. Okay. So, do you think that this European Week of Sports can help people in Serbia? For example, families being together, not on the social media, but going outside in parks or...
Yeah, that's one, izvinjam se. Da, to je jedan vid motivacije i sama akcija koju imamo zajedno sa Olimpijskim komitetom Srbije, želim da se zahvalim i na inicijativi i na volji i želji da zajedno motivišemo one prave vrednosti, jeste akcija Be Active, što se održava u subotu na Adi i pozvao bi sve prisutne da se uključi, da tako pošaljemo i snažniju poruku zajedno i sa Evropskom komisijom i sa svima, da pokažemo da je zdravlje preduslov i jake ekonomije i snažnije društva i snažnije države. To je jedan od vidova aktivizma i promocije onoga što sam ja ovde rekao. Drugi su i finansijska davanja kroz mogućnost s jedne strane izgradnje infrastruktura, ali s druge strane većeg izdvajanja finansija za sve saveze, ne samo za ove najpopularnije, ali tu mislim saveze koji se bave rekreativnim sportom. Vidim predstavnike saveza koji se upravo tim pitanjem bave i drago mi je da su uzeli učešće danas ovde, jer je to važan aspekt našeg društva, pored školskog i univerzitetskog sporta, jer moramo se vratiti u ono doba da kroz ovakve akcije, ali kroz niz drugih akcija motivišemo decu da se bave sportom i jako je bitno da shvatimo da je sport, a daću lični primjer u svemu tome, počeo sam da se bavim sportom kada sam imao 8 godina, danas deca ili roditelji dece šalju decu već sa 6 godina i već sa 5-6 godina deca prave prve korake u sportu. Tako da moramo da se vratimo i da motivišemo decu u ranijem uzrastu, da se pravilno sa njima radi, da se na pravilan način kanališe njihova volja i energija, da ostanu u sportu, da prvi korak i dodir sa sportom bude obavezujući, da ta deca shvate da je sport njihov izbor i na to mislim predškolski uzrast i jačanje sporta u predškolskom uzrastu.
Hvala. Mrs. Joanna Brand, the country fact sheets on physical activity published recently jointly by the World Health Organization and the European Commission that shows that the levels of physical activity are usually higher among boys than girls. 29% of men are sufficiently active, while only 17% of women. What do you think could be a reason for that, and what should we do and who to address to and how to help to equalize these numbers?
Thank you, Svetlana. Mr. Commissioner, dear friends, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me today here. It is a pleasure, and I'm glad to see so many familiar faces among us. It is a very good question, and I can say I don't understand very good the why we have this problem, and I will explain a little bit in Romania. For example, in Romania, we have a national program called Champions in School. And former Olympic champions go to school and explain to children which are the benefits of sport, why it is important to practice sports, not only for performing, but for your health. And usually more of these champions are women. Even in Romania, we had in the past, and we still have in the present, female models like Nadia Comaneci in the past, and everyone knows her. And even today, when you say Nadia Comaneci, everyone knows what which are her performances. And we have names like Cristina Neagu in handball, and Simona Halep in tennis. So we have a lot of women that are models for children, and we still have this problem. Maybe I could understand why this problem exists at I don't know, 25, 30 years old, but not when you are children. Women usually, after they get married, they try to put on the first place the children, the husband, and the second themselves. So maybe this could be a reason, but not at an early age. We have another program that we launched 2 months ago at the Minister, and this is all for the same for children. It is on 3 parts, and one of the parts is little championships between children that are not registered at clubs, so they are an active population, we can say, and try to move them to be more active.
Gabby, how do you think that policymakers can help increase physical activity levels?
Yes, but policymakers should be very focused on developing the grassroots. It is important for a country to have a high level of performance, but we all agree that it is more important to have a healthy population, to have this grassroots very good developed. And for example, in Romania, because Romania it will be part of the championship of football Euro 2020, because of this championship, the government will construct over 400 small bases spread in all country to be put at the population needed. And a lot of other things, but this one 400 bases are for the population and trying to make the population more and more active.
Thank you. Mr. Janez Kocijancic, can you tell us more about the role of the Olympic movement in the European Union to promote physical activity and more generally healthy lifestyles?
Thank you. Dobar dan, good afternoon. First, allow me a privilege that I say 2 introductory remarks which are not connected with the question. First, I would like to congratulate European Commission and Commissioner Tibor Navracic to do really this step, to go beyond the borders of European Union. Now, I am representing 50 national Olympic committees of Europe, 28 in the European Union and 22 outside. And it is the highest time that we go beyond borders and that we treat the continent as a continent, and that if we are not equal in rights, that we are at least equal in some treatments. And second, times, years ago, I lived 2 times in Belgrade, in another country. And in a way, Belgrade is the city of my youth, and I can tell you that the choice of Belgrade for such meeting of such a high level round table is an excellent one, because Belgrade is a city with a sport heart, and believe me, not only George Vishatsky and Minister Udovicic, which are the champions, very known, but the normal population here lives and breathes with the sport. And answering your question, European movement uses a lot of historic or antique expressions. You know, the Olympic movement was born as a religious activity in Greece, very democratic. Men competing naked, and ladies were not allowed to come, and if they came, they were punished with death. Nowadays it is different, but we still use the same expressions, and we always say that Olympic movement is based on several pillars. One of them is sports for all. There is no elite sport or high-level sport without grassroots sport and without sport for all. And there is no sport for all or grassroots sport without elite sport, because the biggest propaganda for the grassroots sport is elite sport. I think that sport as a social phenomenon is changing its face. Now it's segmented in a new way. What was maybe some dozens of years ago not a problem, now it's a very big problem. Sport for aging population, which is bigger and bigger in proportion. But in the same time, we can say that also this approach through mass sports activity makes Europe very strong. We are the strongest continent in the world. It's less than 10% of population. We achieve 50% of summer sport and over 70% of winter sport medals. And on the other side, if you allow me, I would say that sport as a social phenomenon is bringing into society many merits, many elements which give the modern life higher value. It is appreciation of the adversary, there is sports ethics, there is recognition of everybody else. That is also a phenomenon where people do not differ by social status. If you play football, the rich and the poor play the same game. So sport is an element of a modern democratic society. And let me finish with a comparison. You know, in all European countries, we have Ministry of Agriculture. In quite a few, we have Ministry for Sport. It is always education, science and sport, defense and sport, public services and sport. Sport is always added. But in quite a number of European countries, sport nowadays represents higher percent of GDP than agriculture. Let us think about it.
Thank you, but I have one more question for you.
Yes.
Do you think that big events organized, and for example, Slovenia is now the actual European champion in basketball, did this make an influence that many boys and girls now are practicing basketball and are on the public courts even? Do you think that the top athletes can be role models and to promote sport for all?
Well, I'm quite sure that big events promote sport. Although, you know, in modern life, everything is a matter of proportions. Some big events are too expensive, and sometimes they make harm, not a help to the development of sport. So it all has to be in proportion, but let me tell you that the gold medal won here in Belgrade had a tremendous impact in Slovenia to the youngsters. Unfortunately, not to the national team, because until then we are losing all the competitions.
Thank you. Mr. Bogdan Venta, the European Parliament is very active in the field of sports, physical activity and healthy lifestyles. How does Europe welcome the opening of the European Week of Sports to Eastern Partnership, Western Balkans for the first time this year?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this high-level discussion here, so such distinguished guests. But let me start from the European Parliament, but I mean personally responsibility for not only from the European Parliament, but the whole European institutions, the Commission, as the Commissioner said, and from the Council, is first of all, because for me, be active, physically active, is be sporty. I mean, sport. And that is why the role of institution from the European perspective is to create a really positive legal environment, for example, for sport federations and different organizations and associations, and especially to improve the cooperation, and sometimes it is necessary to coordinate the work from these federations. I, for example, personally really appreciate the connection with the European Olympic Committee, which helped me a lot to convince sometimes colleagues in Parliament what is really sport in Europe. We talk about the physical activity, also here, just now. Everything begins down with the children, the kindergarten, and then because the school, and then finally, if we write our matriculation, sometimes we started our professional career. But everything begins with the children, with our childhood. One data for you, probably you are aware about this. Nowadays, sport in Europe is an industry. Sport creates new 10 million job places. Sport, if I correctly, maybe the President can correct me, but give the last year 2.2 or 2.25 of European GDP, percent of European GDP, which means new 280 billion of euro. That is another dimension of this physical activity of the sport. On the other hand, we have this, what is, for example, grassroots sport. And the European Parliament launched a report in 2016 with the title, the report on integrated approach of sport policy, the main goal, good governance, accessibility, integrity, which mentioned grassroots, the role of grassroots sport to tackle different risks, social inclusion, cohesion, integration. Also this phenomenon that sport makes important contribution because the European Union has a strategic objective as a social value also for us, which is solidarity, prosperity, peace, respect for human rights. That is all our European value. I mean, frankly speaking, this last report speaks about a fundamental right for everyone in Europe to be active, to be sporty, and no important which kind of group you represented, social group or vulnerable, or older people, also migrants, or the people with disabilities. I mean, that is for me, as a former athlete, also main goal, how I can work in the European Parliament. I remember in my time, my mother called me, come back, the dinner is waiting. Now, sometimes the mother say, go out, move you, and then come back to eat. I mean, that is the challenge for us. As I noticed in the previous panel, Ms. Bushlight said about the role of big cities, SDGs. I mean, from a European perspective, we develop faster, maybe we can better cooperate, maybe we can better communicate, but this is also the problem, global problem. The rule of big cities. Nowadays in the world, the population of the cities is 56%. In 25 or 30 years will be 80%. I mean, that is this dimension, the sport. From my perspective also, from the European Parliament, it was important to establish integrated sport because only about such group of people, they created this integrated group of sport from different countries, MEPs, different countries, different political groups, and different committees. We could offer for different organizations with strong cooperation with the European Commission to give the people stage to talk about the problem. And one of these problems is exactly physical activity. I see the physical activity to be active, to be sporty. And this is the big challenge for us for the future. We should really move us really all together, especially if we will win this fight. Because, as in the previous panel, some always say, about this. For example, I notice I'm here, but the environmental condition, economical conditions, it's easy today, especially for young people with different electronic devices to spend the time. I don't know, maybe you are aware about this research on the German side. They try to, at the level from the first class to the gymnasium, to take out these electronic devices from the children. What's happened? All these schools, the children have like 4 hours free times more. The problem was, the children was not prepared how to organize their free time. That is one side of the story. Another story, the teachers, the schools, also they were not prepared how to organize this time. I mean, that is sometimes funny, but we talk here about this. But everything, as I said before, started really down. And our, obligation is sometimes during such high panels or policy makers, we can prepare everything as a pyramid, really to the top. But we should really explain to people ourselves how to really live with this, how to really improve this. And then maybe as the question to Mr. Minister, finally the families, the parents will be really more involved. And maybe then finally we will say to our children, if I will, as the father, I will say, I have more time, I will say to my son, play computer, don't move you. That is also our responsibility. At the moment in the parliament, we stay really involved in the work with the issue of sport. And I really appreciate the really close cooperation, especially with DG Sport, the European Commission, and Mr. Navracic, because we also are friends of Hamburg, and that is my personal business. But I appreciate all people, they really recognize this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wolfgang Baumann, the latest Eurobarometer on sport and physical activity revealed that engagement in sport and physical activity is less prevalent among people with lower levels of education and among those with financial difficulties. What do you think should be done to address inequalities in promoting physical activity and more general healthy lifestyles?
Thank you very much for the question. It's a rather complex one, to be very frank, but to start with I would like to just briefly come back to what Janes mentioned a minute ago. In about 1 week, some of us will meet in Buenos Aires. And why is this the case? The IOC is organizing a huge forum. And it will also be the platform that the first 6 cities in the world will be awarded Active City of the World. It is an accreditation project that has been now running for 1.5 years. It's quite a complex process to receive this award, but it's also about how the grassroots movement worldwide and the international or the Olympic movement is working together, because this project was funded by the IOC and our organization, TAFISA, had the privilege to operate it. And but it also sheds light on what you said before, that we have to think about the city setting. We have to look at things from a different angle. We have to change to a certain degree the paradigm, and that is to say, not just looking on one particular player like the sport club or kindergarten, but to have a look at what it is all around and what is the overarching setting idea. Coming to your question, which is indeed not so easy to answer, even though at the end of the day it is quite simple to answer. And I'm happy to say that I can bring some very new or updated information today, since my organization is also part of an Erasmus Plus project that only met last week. And this is actually focusing on this particular question. And unfortunately we have to say there is this, so to say, deadly circle about those parts of the population that are coming from a lower social class, whatever this means. They are not as lucky as people coming from a higher social class. And there are basically 2 main reasons. One is, I would call it an objective reason. It is connected and linked with a lack of funds. Economy, budget restraints can be and are very often indeed a reason why certain groups of society still do not have access to sport clubs, to sport facilities, and so on. And you might say, it is so cheap. Even in Germany, the sport club fee is rather low, but it still does not work. And I'm happy to say that we are aware that in some European countries, there is a strategy to compensate, to reimburse groups of youngsters, families, that they have access to sport. But this is only one part, one side of the medal. The other side, I think, is even more complex to understand and to solve. It goes into the individual lifestyle of underprivileged social groups. They are living in a different mindset, in a different atmosphere, I'm sorry to say. They have different motives to do or not to do sport. And here, for example, what is extremely important, and I'm happy that at this stage of time of our discussion I can enter this topic, it is the role of parents. I personally believe, our organization believes, the number one group that we never discuss and that has the most extreme influence on the future physical activity life of a kid are the parents. What is not happening in the first 6 years cannot be compensated. And we know that if you are unlucky and you are a child of a parent that is inactive, you have a 50% risk that you will follow the same example. Coming back to the topic, if the parents in social excluded or not well-equipped groups have not this special role or this example, then it also makes it even more difficult for the youngsters to be physically active. And they have different motives. So we have found out, I found this very exciting because it has something to do with lifelong sport. If you come from a higher social level, you would invest much more time in lifetime sports. Yeah, you would enter into sports that help you to carry all over your life. Sometimes they are more expensive. But when it comes to excluded groups, they very much are at home in body contact sports, high competitive value, and the career is over at the end of the 30s. And then they have no sort of sustainable way of being physically active. So your question is indeed very, very complex, but it is basically lack of time, lack of money, wrong parental circumstances, and a different mindset when it comes to make decisions in the field, making choices in physical activity. It can be solved. The reasons are on the table, but it's not one of the easiest topics. And coming to an end, because I'm just looking at the commissioner, I would just once again remind all of us that there is already a very, very good paper existing. You remember the high-level report on grassroots sports. So I can only recommend all of you to pick it up again, because a lot of stuff is already existing, and we need to avoid duplicating and reinventing the wheel, because there is so much good work already done. We just have to make use of it. So, a very complex issue, but of course, with a special strategy it can be solved. But again, apologize that I mentioned this again. Parents, parents, parents. If we don't get them into the boat, all the work that we are doing at the end of the day might be.
Do you have any suggestion how to make an influence on parents? I suppose they listen to the radio while they're driving to the work or watch TV, or
Of
maybe
course.
to frighten them. What can help?
There is
to-
no network. For some reason, one of my daughters is pregnant with a second grandchild. And I very interestingly follow her biography right now. There is no network in Germany that takes care of young mothers, for example, or fathers. We have now this system of parental leave. I mean, is it parental leave when fathers or mothers can stay at home? There is all that the church is contacting him. He's right now doing it with the first man. The church is contacting him. The producers of all sorts of stuff are contacting. No sport club is coming close. No sport federation. So I think we have to think a little bit out of the box, and we have to establish some sort of system that is relevant for parents that have children from the age of 0 to 6, because then school steps in, but it's too late. So even in a country like Germany that has no sport ministry, and I'm very grateful that Yannick said this, we have no sport ministry, needs to enter into this, and I think we should start an Erasmus Plus extra program on getting parents involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't even know whether it's he or she.
And now let's ask Mr. Laurent Carnot, which is the ambassador of this movement. You were a top swimmer in your country, you're a record holder, and do you think that top-level athletes need to adopt healthy lifestyles to be able to compete, of course, at the top? And should they, and can they, and how can they make an impact on their societies? How can they motivate young kids, maybe not 0 to 6, but a little bit older, to be more physically active and to have a healthy lifestyle?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this high-level panel. I think I blushed a little bit with all the high-level people next to me. But I'll try to answer your question as well as I can. I think it's not really a discussion that high-level athletes can play a role in being role models for the society, and especially I think for young kids and young children. And I think you only have to look at participation rates in sport, in clubs, when a top athlete in a country performs exceptionally well. I mean, if you look at Jamaica with Usain Bolt, the increase in participation in athletics is immense. I mean, if we had Germany, it's maybe not the best example, but Jan Ullrich, when he won the Tour de France, he had a massive increase in cycling, and in Luxembourg as well. Boris Becker in tennis. In Luxembourg, we had the Schleck brothers in cycling. And that's not just the children. If you go on the roads in Luxembourg, and I haven't seen it in any other country in Europe, if you see how many people actually cycle in a sportive way, it's quite impressive. And I think that has a massive impact on what you get from the media and what these high-level athletes can be as a role model. But nonetheless, I think that we can do a lot better with this, because there's maybe a lack of an active approach of involving those athletes. Quite a lot of them, and I think it comes back as well a little bit in how we take care of these athletes when they go out of sports, how much support they receive. Because I'm also a member of the Athletes Commission in my country, and I do feel that quite a lot of these athletes are quite frustrated and don't really want to get involved in the sports movement anymore. And I think if we could do better there and also involve them into more local approaches, I think that the impact would be much bigger. Just last week, actually, I'm also a member of the commission in my commune, very small commune, 3,000 people, but we organized an event which was called Together Fit, and we actually managed to get over 200 people in the commune from 3,000 people in detecting new sports, in trying physical activity, and it was actually quite inspiring. And also by getting those high-level athletes more involved into school, and I think on a political level, we quite often talk about this cross-sectoral approach, and it's quite similar for the school as well. I was in a school just a couple of months back, and they actually had a program running where first year of secondary school, so 13-year-old kids, would actually discover the Olympic spirit, the Olympic movement, and throughout all the different subjects. So it wasn't just confined to physical education subject, but throughout all the different subjects they would talk about this value. They would do a little competition in classes, and I think that can have a massive impact, because if you think about it, and even what we do today, we talk about physical activity, but we sit here and we all know that sitting down
is a football game.
Yes, I know. But sitting down is actually one of the biggest health risks, and what we do in school actually is that, well, I read a Finnish study that 97% of the time the children actually sit down, which is paradox. We want them to get moving, but in education we actually force them to sitting down, to sit still, and I think that's something where we can rethink it quite well. We have to rethink it and be quite innovative with new ways of education, and I think that athletes can play a role model in that as well.
I have one more question for you. You work in a high school?
I used to, yes.
And e-sports, like video games, are now very popular. Do you think, from your experience, from those boys and girls that you teach, is there any chance to win this game, like to let them go out?
Well, I think there is, because I do think that the human nature has an inherent drive to move. And I think we shouldn't forget about that, but we should, as I just mentioned, we should really initiate those young kids to rediscover this and to actually be allowed to move around. I mean, even for my generation, I was a high-level athlete. But what you did when you would finish a training session, quite often you actually, well, you recovered, but quite often you went and played some e-games and stuff like that. So it's a very hard fight. But again, maybe you can use it to your advantage as well, because you do discover maybe new sports with these activities as well. But you do have an incentive in place to actually get them away from the TV screen again and actually get them on the field as well and do it in real life. Because if you look at the young generation, everyone can play FIFA on the PlayStation, everyone can play 2K basketball on the PlayStation, but there's no, well, they're not able to do it on the court anymore. And I'm actually quite happy that the Luxembourgish government just yesterday actually presented a new policy where they really focus on children from 0 to 12 years old, and where they focus on giving them the motor skills again, because you're only going to do something if you master it, if you're good at it, and because only then you're going to have some fun. And if you actually give back or teach those motor skills to the kids and they have fun at doing it, I think you can have quite a big impact.
Thank you. Now I would ask our Minister and the Commissioner, you as a host, both, if you can give some conclusion to this meeting, because, or to ask you, do you have any questions? This was very interesting. Debate? Somebody?
Thank you a lot, and especially the Commissioner and Dr. Venta, because I think that the EU did a great job in the last 10 years, 15 years on sports, and allotting also resources and so on. But also starting and prompting the dialogue between different stakeholders and different sectors. I have one question though. First of all, the hope is that you will continue in this trend. But the question is, you were talking about having a sort of joint venture with like a food diet, nutritionist and so on. And this is what the JPI, Healthy Diet and Healthy Lifestyle, did recently. And I have also a feeling that something is missing, because this JPI has 3 phases. And the first one, physical activity, was present. In the second one, disappeared. And the third is the same. So what I'm saying is maybe physical activity or sport, or whatever you want to call it, because obviously there is a problem in also the definition, has to be present. And one missing link is also in research. The European Research Council does not include a term related to active lifestyle, sedentary behaviors, or sport or physical activity. There is just one thing in Life Science 5, which is hypoactive syndrome, which is really out of the reality, because if you look at the incidence of this syndrome, is nothing compared to the health risk of inactive lifestyle. So maybe we should also push this term into this environment, because allows also access to Horizon 2020 or other form of funding, and also is allows people to realize that physical activity and sport is a major issue on the European society, and it's a major issue also to put Europe as a leader in the world on this problem.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and we plan to extend our cooperation to the area of research as well, just because of the very strong correlations, and somehow research can be a forerunner of our later activities, and it's a good idea to discuss the opportunities to put some some research projects or research programs in Horizon Europe, which will be the successor of Horizon 2020 in the next multi-annual financial framework. So yeah, definitely we will discuss it with my colleague Commissioner Moedas.
Yes, of course.
I also fully agree with your position, especially, frankly speaking, the role of scientists, what you say in the previous panel about this collecting the minimum data, because they can help us to really build the awareness across the member states, across the European Union, and to help really how to realize our goals. I mean, that is the rule. Also in our intergroup, we organize a lot of meeting session conferences and hearings related to different topics. For example, the role of women, but also about the risk that still exists in sport, but also the role of scientists, innovation, and new technologies that can help us also. That is why this part of the science, this part of the people are really important in this topic. Thank you.
More questions? Okay, now let's go to the conclusion. Minister.
Thank you. Danas smo otvorili vrlo značajnu temu i imali smo priliku da od svakog govornika čujete zanimljive predloge, ali zanimljive i poglede na vrlo značajnu temu, a to je kako da budemo zdraviji. I drago mi je da je svako sa svog stanovišta otvorio i dao predlog, ali otvorio značajnu temu i pokazao gde je određeni problem i na koji način mu treba prići. Ova borba je borba koja je duga, borba, da kažemo u sportskom žargonu, ovo nije brza trka, ovo je maraton. I u ovom maratonu mislim da svi mi zajedno treba da pobedimo, ali u ovoj utakmici nema brzog pobednika i nema konkretnog pobednika, već svi zajedno moramo da zajedničkim snagama shvatimo da je današnje vreme, vreme društvenih mreža, vreme e-sporta, vreme gde deca vrlo gledaju se na svoje idole, ali gledaju se i na svoje roditelje. Tako da svi zajedno treba da preuzmemo odgovornost i da shvatimo da smo odgovorni za našu sadašnjost, a da smo odgovorni za našu budućnost. Zahvaljujem se svima koji su došli danas, zahvaljujem se komesaru, ministarki, predsjedniku, svima vama koji ste danas razgovarali na ovu temu. Hvala vam što ste odabrali Beograd kao mesto i složit ću se sa predsjednikom Evropskog olimpijskog komiteta, sa zemljom koja živi sport, sa zemljom koja se budi i leže sa sportom i sa zemljom koja slavi sportske rezultate na ulicama svoga grada. To smo radili bezbroj puta i nadam se da ćemo to uraditi u nedelju, da slavimo medalju naših odbojkaša na svetskom prvenstvu u Italiji, to jest u više zemalja, ali finale u Italiji. Hvala vam još jednom i bilo mi je veliko zadovoljstvo učestvovati i razgovarati sa vama, pogotovo u društvu ovakvih sportskih veličina, ali veličina, moram reći, sportskih radnika. Hvala vam.
Hvala vama. You, Commissioner?
Thank you very much. I totally agree with the minister, and I agree in stating that it's going to be a long fight. And I think the reason why it's going to be a long fight is just because we have to convince and to sometimes overcome ourselves to make our next generations healthier. Because while I like very much the Romanian model to bring role models and athletes into schools to show successful life careers and sports paths for young people. And I also agree with Bogdan that it's the responsibility of the parents, because we are at home, we are with our children. So we have to start to not only convince ourselves to be healthier, but to do sport. And I think we have to convince our friends as well, and we have to organize some small-scale sports events in neighborhoods, in streets, in villages, in cities. Just a day out, just a short football match, for instance, what we will do after this long sitting workshop and panel discussion, because sports can create friendships, sometimes loves, and definitely can create powerful, strong communities, and that's the most important. We have to be, individually we have to be healthy, but we also have to be collectively healthy. That means we have to live in communities, in strong communities, we have to enjoy life, and we shouldn't sit as much as we did this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Now it should be a short reception. We don't want to be late for this football game. I hope that you're all ready to show us your skills. And now please stay for the reception. I hope that you all enjoyed and that you all realize how important for our kids is these topics that we had today. Thank you very much.